Good morning, Auke van Nimwegen. So, who
Right.
is Auke van Nimwegen?
Well, I live in the Netherlands, and I've worked with Sparlandemics for about 20 years. We have an international company that provides all sorts of services around working with Sparlandemics in organizations. I live here with my partner and my two kids.
Okay, Auke, how has Spiral Dynamics helped you in your life, personally and professionally?
I've when I came in contact with Sparlandemics, I already had quite a number of years of experience with working in organizations. I started working. I've trained as an engineer. I worked for about 20 years in the IT industry as a specialist, and I did a lot of work internationally. And in that time, I learned how to work with different cultures. I worked a lot in Southeast Asia, in the US, in Australia, in Poland, and all these cultures were very different. And I found a way, like most of us, I think, to work with that. But then when I learned about Sparlandemics, I actually understood what I had been doing, and the whole picture became a lot more clear. And the other thing is that when working with organizations, with Sparlandemics, I actually had the words and I had the model and I had a way to explain the what was going on in the organizations and how things can be done differently. And on a personal level, to me, it's also been a great tool to understand what's going on in our world, because we live in a world with a lot of diversity, more and more, because since the internet and since the possibility to travel around the world, so many cultures have come together and become a lot more complex. I live in the Netherlands, and we have had, since the 70s, we had a lot of immigrants in our country, and that's created a lot of dynamics. And Sparlandemics allows us to understand that, and allows us to understand that it's not so much the Moroccan culture that collides with the Dutch culture, but that it's the complexity of the people that come in that collides with the complexity of our country. And that's quite a big difference. And we also worked in social projects to help social workers in areas that needed improvement, to understand what was going on, and also to understand why certain interventions they would do worked and why other interventions wouldn't work. So it's been, to me, in my life, it's been a great help.
After having met Spiral Dynamics, you got interested into going deeper, training with Dr. Don Beck and becoming a trainer yourself. What can you tell us about that?
Attended a training with Don, I think back in 2004, 2005. And I went to California for that, and I found him really inspiring, especially because of the practical stories that he could tell. I already understood Sparlandemics then, but really the depth that he gave was really important. So then in 2007, he asked me to become one of the certified trainers. And so since then, I've actually been certified to teach courses that are authorized by him. Back in 2007 in the Netherlands, we had this big surge of interest in Sparlandemics. And that was partially from people that were working on social projects and partly from people that were working in organizations. And it's probably because in the Nordic countries in Europe, we were one of the first ones to run into lots of social issues around immigration and also, other themes. And the Netherlands has been a liberal country. It has always explored new social. So the Netherlands has always been upfront with new social developments, but that also has caused a lot of problems. And that's one of the reasons why in our country spiral dynamics was actually needed. And besides the projects that I mentioned, where we work with inner city problems, we've also worked a lot with local We've also worked with local municipalities to use spiral dynamics to understand what's going on in their cities, to understand what was going on in the projects that we're doing. Yeah. So we've when we started with spiral dynamics here in the Netherlands, it was part of what we call the Center of Human Emergence. That's where we've have the official trainings. In 2010, Paul Suiker and I started Value Match, and we started to develop these assessments. And because we worked internationally, we were also again a need for training, and that's when we've also developed our online offering, online trainings, and which we now provide worldwide. So and we're not part of the Center of Human Emergence anymore, but we're still working together closely with them, as we are working with other partners in other countries around spiral dynamics.
How and for whom is spiral dynamics relevant, especially in this historical moment?
It's relevant for those people that learn about it and that have this aha erlebnis, right? That go like, oh, now I understand what was going on. And that's not for everybody. But especially those people that feel that the world is changing, that people that see that there is a new way of thinking required to solve some of the problems that we are all working with. For people that can understand the positions of different people without necessarily agreeing with them, and that are looking to find new ways, either for social issues, like I mentioned before, but also in organizations. Organizations today have to deal similarly, as similar to our societies. Organizations have to deal with a growing complexity. And especially when they're working international, they will have to work with different cultures, but also within our countries, they get employees that are driven by very different values, that are driven by very different ideas. And how do you build an organization that allows each of those persons to express themselves in a healthy way? I think that's the relevance for now those so it's what I often find is that people that like to work with spiral dynamics are somehow may have the feeling they don't quite fit in the standards, our standard society, and that's a sign that they're looking for a new way of seeing what's happening in our world. And that's what spiral dynamics, at least it gives you the clarity to understand, okay, so this is where I'm at, this is where other people are at. How do we make, how do we create work environments? How do we create a society that works well for everybody?
Okay, level 1 training, the first level of spiral dynamics, who is it ideal for?
Yeah, so we have the fundamentals training. The fundamentals training is for anybody interested in spiral dynamics, whatever your application area is. So we have people in there, a lot from businesses, because that's also with Value Match, that's a core part of our customers. But we have people in there that just do it privately. We have people in there that work on social projects. Anybody that's interested in spiral dynamics can do the fundamentals training and can learn what the fundamentals are. I think it's good to mention here as well that, when you first learn about spiral dynamics and you sort of read the description, it may make sense to you, right? And that doesn't mean that you really know what it is about, because there's a lot of depth in the theory. There's a lot of depth in understanding exactly what Graves meant when he did his research and when he had his findings. Really understanding not just the colors of the value systems, but the dynamics of how people change from less complex to more complex. and the dynamics of understanding that, you know, when we as adults grow, how we relate to previous levels, and what's a healthy and what's an unhealthy way of doing that. And that's actually quite complex, more complex than a lot of people think when they first read an article about spiral dynamics. And that's what the fundamentals training is for, because in that training well, one of the things we do is we let you explore yourself. So we let you explore how you've developed through these various value systems, which are important to you, which were important in you growing up and in your life so far. That's important because we all look at this world through a set of lenses, and it's important to understand that set of lenses. Then, of course, we start to let you experience. Then we let you start experiment with analyzing your world around you. So starting to take a situation that you are interested in and analyze it based on spiral dynamics. And one of the important parts that we do in that training is to let people see that spiral dynamics is not about behavior, but about underlying values, which is one of the most difficult things to understand, because the behavior is, of course, what we see of people. But with spiral dynamics, we're interested not what they do, but why they do what they do, because that tells us what is important to them. And that's not so easy. You know, that's something that requires a bit of time, a bit of understanding. Yeah, that's basically what we do in the fundamentals training.
Okay. Value Match and Cambiamondo helping spiral dynamics help Italy and Italians understand these dynamics better. What value does this have for you?
Yeah, well, we're very happy with our partnership, and first of all, it's really important that we offer people in Italy a chance to learn spiral dynamics through the local language, right? So that's one of the things that our partnership will grow into, where you'll be able to teach in the local language about spiral dynamics, because language is so important. And especially for people that may not be so proficient in English, it's really important to learn in the local language, but for everybody, right? So that's the first important step. The second, of course, is that Value Match provides all these services to apply spiral dynamics in organizations, such as our assessments, the advanced trainings, and we have lots of other instruments and tools for professionals to do that. For the Italian market, for organizations in Italy to be able to successfully work with assessments and any of the other instruments that we provide, again, it's important that it's localized, not just for language, but also for markets, right? Every market, we're a European Union, but every member of that union has a very different way of working, very different market, very different culture. So that's why it's important for us to work with local partners who can localize whatever we build to make it fit for in this situation, for the Italian market. And last but not least, we think it's really fun to work with people in Italy. we love the liveliness of the Italians, and we've had a number of requests of people in Italy to work with us, but we've waited until we found professional partners before we signed any partner agreements, which we've done now.
So, Auke van Nimwegen, we have the privilege to say from Cambiamondo, benvenuti in Italia.